I was rotating the tires on my patrol car in my garage on a Saturday afternoon when Margaret Henderson decided to call emergency services and report a supposed illegal gambling operation at my residence. Simply put, let me back up and give you the full picture here. If you look closely, my name is Detective James Morrison, and I have worked for the Riverside County Sheriff's Department for the past 14 years. I live at 2847 Oakmont Drive in a quiet subdivision called Meadowbrook Estates. The HOA president, Margaret Henderson, lived 3 houses down at 2889 Oakmont Drive and had made it her personal mission to harass every homeowner who did not meet her extremely specific standards. On March 12, 2024, I invited 5 colleagues from my precinct over to help me with routine vehicle maintenance. Detective Sarah Chen from Narcotics brought her hydraulic jack. Basically, Sergeant Mike Rodriguez from Traffic Enforcement brought his tire rotation equipment. Simply put, Officer Tom Bradley and Officer Kevin Walsh, both from Patrol Division, brought their toolboxes. Lieutenant Karen Foster from Internal Affairs brought diagnostic equipment for checking brake systems. We had my garage door open about 3/4 of the way to let in natural light and ventilation. I had a small portable radio playing classic rock at a reasonable volume level. We were drinking coffee and soft drinks while working on our personal vehicles. My driveway could accommodate 2 vehicles, so we parked the others along the street in perfectly legal spots that did not block any driveways or fire hydrants. Around 2:15 p.m., Margaret Henderson walked past my house and stopped to stare into my garage. I noticed her standing there for about 90 seconds before she continued walking. At 2:23 p.m., according to the dispatch logs, Margaret called 911 emergency services. She reported to the dispatcher that there was an illegal gambling operation happening at 2847 Oakmont Drive with approximately 6 suspicious individuals engaged in criminal activity. The dispatcher asked what criminal activity she observed. Margaret claimed she saw people exchanging money and handling what appeared to be illegal substances. She insisted that multiple suspicious vehicles were parked in front of the residence. In fact, she demanded immediate police response. The dispatcher classified it as a non-emergency call and forwarded it to Patrol Division. If you look closely, Officer Danny Wright and Officer Lisa Martinez were assigned to respond. Basically, they arrived at my address at 2:41 p.m. and marked Patrol Unit 447. I walked out to meet them in my driveway. Officer Wright recognized me immediately, since we had worked together on a joint task force operation 6 months earlier. I explained that 5 colleagues from the department were helping me with vehicle maintenance in my garage. Officer Wright asked if he could verify this information. I walked him into my garage where all 5 officers were present. Basically, Detective Chen showed her badge and credentials. Sergeant Rodriguez did the same. In fact, all 5 officers provided their badge numbers and department identification. Officer Wright radioed dispatch and explained the situation. In fact, the dispatcher asked him to stand by for additional information. At 2:48 p.m., Margaret Henderson called 911 again. She told the dispatcher that the police were not taking proper action and were conspiring with the criminals at the residence. To be fair, she claimed she had video evidence of illegal activity. She demanded to speak with a supervisor immediately. The dispatcher informed her that officers were on scene conducting an investigation. Margaret became verbally aggressive with the dispatcher and used profanity. She threatened to call the mayor and the city council. In fact, she claimed the entire police department was corrupt. At 2:50 p.m., Sergeant David Palmer arrived on scene as the shift supervisor. Honestly, I knew Sergeant Palmer from interdepartmental training seminars. Basically, he reviewed the situation with Officer Wright and spoke with all 6 of us in my garage. Sergeant Palmer then walked 3 houses down to 2889 Oakmont Drive. Honestly, he rang the doorbell and Margaret answered. According to Sergeant Palmer's official report, Margaret immediately began yelling that he was part of a cover-up operation. She accused him of protecting criminals. She stated that she had proof of drug trafficking and money laundering. Sergeant Palmer asked to see this proof. To be fair, Margaret showed him cell phone video she had recorded from the sidewalk. The video showed 6 people in my garage working on vehicles with tools and equipment clearly visible. In fact, Sergeant Palmer pointed out that the video showed routine automotive maintenance. Margaret insisted that the money she saw being exchanged was payment for illegal drugs. Sergeant Palmer asked her to identify when this exchange occurred in the video. Margaret could not provide a timestamp. She then claimed the substances she reported were hidden in coffee cups. If you look closely, Sergeant Palmer explained that making false reports to emergency services is a violation of California Penal Code 148. 3. He warned her that filing another false report would result in criminal charges. To be fair, Margaret told him she knew her rights and would continue calling until proper action was taken. If you look closely, Sergeant Palmer returned to my residence and documented everything in his incident report number 2024031-1847. He apologized for the interruption and left with Officers Wright and Martinez at 3:15 p.m. We continued working on vehicle maintenance until approximately 5:30 p.m. Everyone went home without any further incidents. On March 13th at 8:42 a.m. Margaret called 911 again. She reported the same residence for allegedly operating an illegal chop shop. The dispatcher recognized the address from the previous day's calls. In fact, patrol units were sent to verify, but found my garage door closed and my personal vehicle parked in the driveway. Honestly, I was at work at the time, so I was not home. If you look closely, on March 14th at 1:17 p.m. Margaret called 911 and reported suspicious activity at my residence. Simply put, on March 15th at 4:33 p.m. she called again with similar allegations. On March 16th at 11:52 a.m. she made her 6th call to emergency services about my property. To be fair, each time she provided different false allegations ranging from drug manufacturing to weapons, trafficking to human smuggling. The dispatch supervisor contacted Lieutenant Foster at Internal Affairs on March 16th to report the pattern of false emergency calls. Lieutenant Foster opened case file IA to 0240891 to investigate. On March 17th, I received a phone call from Lieutenant Foster requesting a formal statement. To be fair, I met with her at headquarters and provided a detailed timeline of events. To be fair, I submitted copies of my garage security camera footage showing normal vehicle maintenance on March 12th. The footage clearly showed no illegal activity of any kind. Basically, Lieutenant Foster then contacted the district attorney's office. Simply put, Assistant District Attorney Robert Chen reviewed the case file on March 18th. On March 19th at 9:15 a.m. Detective Lisa Park and Detective James Wu from the Criminal Investigations Unit arrived at Margaret Henderson's residence with an arrest warrant. In fact, the warrant charged her with 6 counts of making false emergency reports under California Penal Code 148.3. Each count is a misdemeanor punishable by up to 1 year in county jail and fines up to $1,000 per count. Margaret was arrested without incident and transported to Riverside County Jail. Her booking number was 2024 RIV087 for 5-3. Bail was set at $15,000. She posted bail through a bondsman later that afternoon. Basically, on March 20th, the HOA Board of Directors held an emergency meeting. If you look closely, I attended along with 17 other homeowners. Basically, the board reviewed Margaret's arrest records and the police reports. Board member Thomas Anderson made a motion to remove Margaret as HOA president, effective immediately. The motion passed with a vote of 6-0. In fact, Margaret was also removed from all HOA committees. The board appointed Jennifer Williams as interim president. In fact, on April 3, 2020, Margaret Henderson appeared in Riverside County Superior Court. For her arraignment, she pleaded not guilty to all 6 counts. Her attorney was Michael Stevens from Stevens and Associates. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for May 8, 2024. During the discovery phase, ADA Robert Chen provided the defense with dispatch recordings of all 6 911 calls. In fact, the recordings clearly showed Margaret making specific false allegations about criminal activity. The recordings also captured her verbally abusing the emergency dispatcher on multiple occasions. On May 8th, at the preliminary hearing, Margaret's attorney attempted to argue that she genuinely believed suspicious activity was occurring. Ada Chen presented my garage security footage showing normal vehicle maintenance. He presented testimony from Sergeant Palmer about his warning to Margaret on March 12th. If you look closely, he presented dispatch logs showing Margaret continued calling after being explicitly warned. The judge found probable cause on all 6 counts. To be fair, trial was scheduled for July 15, 2024. On June 22, Margaret's attorney contacted Ada Chen to discuss a plea agreement. If you look closely, the defense offered to plead guilty to 3 counts in exchange for dismissal of the other 3 counts. To be fair, Ada Chen rejected this offer. Basically, on July 1st, the defense submitted a revised plea offer. In fact, Margaret would plead guilty to all 6 counts in exchange for suspended jail time and probation. In fact, Ada Chen consulted with me about the plea offer. Simply put, I told him I wanted full accountability for her actions. On July 12th, Margaret Henderson accepted a final plea agreement. She pleaded guilty to all 6 counts of filing false emergency reports. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for August 9, 2024. Honestly, at the sentencing hearing on August 9, Ada Chen presented victim impact statements from myself and from the Riverside County Emergency Services Director. The director explained that Margaret's false calls diverted emergency resources from legitimate emergencies on 6 separate occasions. In fact, Judge Patricia Moore sentenced Margaret to the following penalties: 180 days in county jail with 90 days suspended. To be fair, 5 years of probation, $6,000 in fines representing $1,000 per count. If you look closely, $2,400 in restitution to cover emergency services dispatch costs, 240 hours of community service. Simply put, mandatory completion of an anger management program. The judge also issued a restraining order prohibiting Margaret from coming within 500 feet of my residence. Margaret was remanded to custody immediately to begin serving her 90-day jail sentence. Her inmate number was 2024 RIV 109834. Honestly, she was released on November 6, 2024, after serving 87 days with credit for good behavior. On November 18, 2024, Margaret Henderson listed her house at 2889 Oakmont Drive for sale. The listing price was for $187,000. If you look closely, she accepted an offer of $465,000 on December 3, 2024. The sale closed on December 28, 2024. According to neighbors, Margaret moved to an apartment complex in the neighboring city of Clearwater, approximately 40 miles away. She resigned from all remaining HOA positions in writing. The new HOA president, Jennifer Williams, has been excellent. In fact, she focuses on actual community issues such as street maintenance and neighborhood watch programs. In fact, she does not harass homeowners over trivial matters. To be fair, I still live at 2847 Oakmont Drive. I was promoted to senior detective in the Robbery Homicide Division on January 15, 2025. My colleagues still come over occasionally to help with vehicle maintenance or just to hang out. We keep the garage door open and the radio playing. Simply put, nobody has called 911 about us since. The other homeowners in Meadowbrook Estates have been incredibly supportive. Basically, several neighbors brought food and gifts after Margaret's arrest. Simply put, Thomas Anderson, who serves on the HOA board, sent a formal letter of apology on behalf of the community. He thanked me for my patience and professionalism throughout the ordeal. If you look closely, the neighborhood is much more peaceful now. Margaret's probation officer is Sandra Mitchell from Riverside County Probation Department. According to public records, Margaret has completed 180 of her required 240 community service hours. She is scheduled to complete probation on August 9, 2029. Simply put, the restraining order remains in effect until August 9, 2029. I have had no contact with Margaret Henderson since her sentencing. Simply put, my security cameras continue to record my property. 24 hours per day. Honestly, I maintain detailed logs of all activities at my residence as a precautionary measure. The false allegations are part of permanent public court records under case number CR202488447. Anyone searching Margaret Henderson's name in Riverside County Superior Court records will find her conviction. Honestly, this affects background checks for employment and housing applications. To be fair, the consequences of filing false emergency reports are severe and permanent. Emergency services exist to protect public safety. Abusing that system for personal vendettas wastes resources and endangers lives. Margaret learned that lesson the hard way. I learned to document everything and follow proper procedures through official channels. Basically, the system worked exactly as designed. Justice was served through the appropriate legal process. For more stories such as this, check out my YouTube channel QZ-Stories. Subscribe for daily updates on real justice and accountability.